Hello, and welcome to the channel. RB Does Stuff. Today we're looking at some carburetors coming off of snow blowers. I've heard it a million times. It ran when I put it away. I go to get it out and it won't start. So what I'm going to start with is I've got a carburetor, pretty common to the offshore engines. Some of your bigger manufacturers have adapted these too. They come in a variety, but again, they're all made kind of the same. You know, primer, fuel inlet, you got throttle and choke. So with these, they've actually got a drain built in right here. If you take this nut off, the bowl will come off, and then the gasket falls out and you got a mess. So with these, you can just take this one that's at a 45, break it loose and take it out. So yeah, you can just take this out, let it drain, because typically the gas in the carburetor is what goes bad. And then put it back in, let it fill back up, and then hopefully it starts. If it doesn't, then you got to get deeper. So let's take the bowl off. And then inside here, this one's pretty clean. Take off, I forget why it got taken off. But we'll pull the pin out. And you got the float with the inlet needle. And then, you know, sometimes you want to try and peek down in here and just see what the condition of things is. If it's all pitted up, your carburetor will leak all the time. And it doesn't work. So on the top side of these, you take the idle screw out. And then you'll have this jet that pops right out. The O-rings on this jet are kind of special. I have a hard time matching them up. I usually end up ordering a new jet. And then down in there, you can kind of see some holes. You know, you take your carb cleaner out, blow down in there, blow down in through the top, blow, you know, there's little orifices in there, blow those out. Blow all this out in here, blow all this out. Typically with carb cleaner and air, you can clean these up. In the middle of here, this jet, there's a pinhole that goes from here to in here. You know, that's one of your choke points, because it's one of the smaller spots, so that's where the corrosion collects. And then, yeah, you just after you blow everything out, you put it back together. With these carburetors, there's not a whole lot. And then typically, how I go to start is I screw it until it touches, and then go like a full turn. That should get your idle. Some of these machines don't even idle anymore. Put this back together here. Now, when you drain the bowl, if you pull that center bolt first, this gasket is what gets dislodged. And you typically have a hell of a time getting it to stay in there to put the gasket back on. If it shrinks, I've found that if you spray it with carb cleaner, it'll expand. I haven't really found anything to make it shrink. And then you just put it back on. This carburetor is just for an example. This is a takeoff from something else. You know, you can blow out these holes, you know, atmospheric vents, you know, all that fun stuff, blow in, blow out. You know, it can clog up almost anywhere. And then these carburetors will be on newer machines, MTDs, stuff like that. And then on anything that's like 15 years or older, Tecumseh made snowblower engines for a ton of stuff. This is an aftermarket adjustable version of a Tecumseh carburetor. This is a fixed jet adjustable. So with these, Tecumseh always put these nice bowl drains on here. So when you got stale gas in the carburetor bowl, you can just hit this, get your shirt sleeve all wet, and drain the carb bowl. And then, like I say, typically it's the small amount of fuel in the carb that goes stale, not the big amount. So let's go through this newer one that's got the fixed jets. I did kind of prep this ahead of time just so I didn't have any issues. So here's a bowl nut / jet. Now there's a hole. Let's see here. There's a hole right there. There's a hole right there. And then there's a hole down in the center. These all can get clogged up. And you just want to kind of blow them out. And then what I have found is with these Tecumseh ones, the wire clip right here on the inlet needle is always the perfect size for cleaning out this jet here. And then also with these Tecumseh carbs, after you clean the jet out, you can take the old inlet needle clip, assuming that you got a new kit, fold the end, and then inside this tower, inside the threads, opposite where this hole, this BB is, there is a hole. And typically you just make a little angle bent end on that, and then you just kind of find it in there. There you go. Oh yeah. You play with it long enough, you'll find the spot. It drops in. That's part of your idle jet. And then on the top side, you've got the actual idle jet. This has holes in the side. It's got a hole in the tip. I always like the little inlet needle clip. Cleans that hole out nice. Now, if you take carb cleaner, blow in here, it should come out here. And I want to say one of these other ports. And then blow it out with air. Make sure everything, you know, blow it out with carb cleaner, blow it out with the air. You know, you've got these little ports. You got some little ports right there at the butterfly, right in there along the edge. Blow those out. Those lead into a chamber behind this plug. These are those internal ports that clog up from sitting, and then nothing wants to run. And then, yeah, with these, when you put this jet in the side, you typically want to hold the carb in its level spot and screw it in. There's a metering pin inside that sometimes you can run the screw into the side of it and it'll damage it. Yes, I'm missing the clip. You know, I don't have a new one. This is a takeoff. It's just for an example. And then I just want to show you, you know, you just want to get the float level with the body You know, that's too high. You know, that's too low. Just want to get it right there. And then put it back together. Now these Tecumseh carbs with the fixed jets came on a lot of different stuff. Tecumseh design, they kept with the same thing. So now this is an older, well, this is a brand new aftermarket carb, but it's an older design with these adjustable jets. The jets have spring, brass washer, and O-ring. And then these jets, much like the fixed jet, also have the small hole right there, hole across, hole through the middle, of course. Now, if you're working on a Tecumseh and it doesn't have this bowl drain, if you loosen these most of the way, you can kind of break it loose and then you can get the gas to drain that way. But sometimes you'll lose that upper gasket in there. And then when that falls out, you typically have to replace it. This is an aftermarket carb, so the float and inlet needle and stuff is going to look different. And then, yeah, like I say, you know, have the carburetor in its normal position. Taking the idle jet out. Same thing with the bottom jet. Spring, brass washer, and O-ring. And it's just like the one with the fixed jets. Blow in here. You'll see it come out here. You know, come out one of these other ports. This is your primer line. This is an atmospheric vent. You've still got the same holes right inside there. Quite see. There you go. See the little dots there. Blow those all out. They blow behind this little cover. This cover is removable. Sometimes it can be difficult. Sometimes it can be easy. And then again, when you put this in, you want to have the carburetor in the way you're holding it, or in the way that it's mounted to the engine level. You run it into that metering pin and it's pretty much a junk carb. And then typically one turn on the idle jet. Put everything back together, pin back in, make sure it's level, a little off. Bowl gasket on here. And then this dent, you see how that's got that dent? The shallow part here goes under the hinge. And then when running this in, back this screw way out and then run the nut in, tighten it up, and then set your screw. Typically 1.5 turns from closed. Half, and 1.5. And yeah, that'll get you in the zone. That'll get you started. And again, you know, these are, you know, Tecumseh carbs. You know, this is your offshore engine. These are your kind of your common carburetors for snowblowers. Briggs & Stratton uses stuff kind of like this one, but not quite. And yeah, that's how things work. Everybody's got their own opinion. This is how I was taught to take things apart. I'm kind of self-taught, so if I missed something, please let me know. If you gained something, hey, that's great. That's what I'm trying to do. You all have a nice day. Be safe. After reviewing my video, I realized I jumped over a big part. So if you look down in there, there is a white rubber seat. You can take a screw. If you blow air in here, sometimes you can shoot it across the room. You know, always wear your safety glasses. I found that you can just take a punch here and you can just kind of work it out. So these seats, what you're going to find is one side has kind of a rib to it. And then the other side is flat. So the flat side is what faces out. So then you're going to stick the ribbed side in first, which, you know, dab of oil ain't gonna hurt. Again, this was all part before. And then with an Allen wrench, with a drift, with anything, as long as you just push it in evenly and get it in there flat, it will do its job. So there we go. That I missed with everything else, and hopefully that covers everything with these carbs.